Greetings everyone, I'm Skylar, and while you might perceive me as an ordinary girl, my life has taken some rather unconventional twists and turns. To be honest, it's become quite complex, and even to this day, I'm in the process of adapting to my new reality. You might be wondering why. Have you ever felt like your entire existence has been built upon a colossal web of deception? It all began after my mother's passing, when I came to realize that this notion pretty much encapsulated my life. Allow me to start from the beginning, and I hope you'll stay with me as I unravel the whole story. I was an only child, and my mother was divorced. We both resided in a small town, and aside from my friends, she was my sole anchor in this world. My mother constituted my entire family. She was a beautiful and kind woman, one who consistently declined the marriage proposals that came her way in order to focus on raising me. Sometimes I used to playfully tease her, jesting that she'd have to get married eventually because sooner or later, I'd head off to college, leaving her all alone. I would joke that I'd love to have a little sister to dote on. Her response was always, "You'll have a sister, don't you worry." Now you might be wondering about my father. The truth is, I had no idea. All I knew was that he had left me with my mother following their divorce and had never shown any interest in my life. Whenever my mom and I discussed him, she insisted that he didn't exist in our world. He was the one who chose to leave, my mother would explain. But she never delved into the reasons behind his departure, always sidestepping my inquiries. My mother worked tirelessly as a waitress at a restaurant, often extending her shifts into the late hours. She was an exceptional mother, toiling day and night to provide me with everything I needed. She had promised that we would embark on a vacation to Hawaii during the next school break. However, if you were to ask me, I would have preferred her to work fewer hours instead of exhausting herself, believing that spending quality time with me at home surpassed any beach in the world. I yearned for her presence when she was away for extended hours. She was my entire world. Despite grappling with financial challenges, I always found happiness in our lives because I genuinely believed I had the world's greatest mother and considered myself profoundly fortunate. Little did I know that our idyllic existence was about to be disrupted. My mother had a heart condition. Whenever exhaustion overcame her, she would return home and take her prescribed pills. She would sleep beside me, clutching my hand. My mother harbored a deep fear of death, frequently discussing it with me as though attempting to prepare me for its inevitability. Her preoccupation with the subject filled me with anxiety. I dreaded the prospect of losing my mother. If she were to pass away, I'd be left utterly alone. One day, we embarked on a shopping excursion, and it proved to be an enjoyable outing. I selected a vibrant purple dress, but my mother insisted on a black one, asserting that every girl should possess such attire. She purchased it for me, even though I wasn't particularly fond of wearing black. As we made our way back to the car, I heard something tumble to the ground. I turned around and saw my mother on the ground, and without a second thought, I dialed for an ambulance. In that moment, it felt like I had nearly lost her. During the ride to the hospital, I prayed fervently for her, while she gazed at me and assured me that everything would be all right. It was evident that my mother's health was deteriorating with each passing day. The incident wasn't as severe as it could have been, but it left me deeply worried about what might occur next. Sadly, my prayers appeared to go unanswered. One day, while I was at school, I received an urgent call from the hospital. My mother was undergoing heart surgery, and I hastily left school to be with her. As I made my way to the hospital, my vision blurred from the tears streaming down my face. Time seemed to crawl, and I struggled to comprehend the situation. That very morning, my mother had left our home looking perfectly fine. She hadn't forgotten to kiss me on the cheek or apply her makeup. She had appeared so healthy. So what had transpired? Upon reaching a hospital, I discovered my mother all set for her surgery. The nurse informed me that my mother had been growing increasingly fatigued in recent days, and her heart had reached a breaking point. She also mentioned that my mother had declined the surgery until she had seen me. When she laid eyes on me, her expression changed. Despite her pain, she mustered a brave smile and clutched my hand. She spoke of her belief that it might be her time, and if she didn't make it through the surgery, she wanted me to know that no one in this world loved me as much as she did. Her words left me in a state of shock, rendering me speechless. Just as I was about to respond, her grip on my fingers tightened, and she whispered, "This box is for you. Take it and don't show it to anyone. And always remember, even though I've had a good life, it doesn't mean I don't have my regrets." My mother was wheeled into surgery, and for a brief moment, the box slipped from my thoughts. The days that followed were some of the darkest in my life. I remained at home, utterly alone, uncertain of where to turn or what to do. My kind-hearted neighbor checked on me regularly, and the authorities were attempting to locate my next of kin. However, I was convinced that after all these years, they wouldn't discover anyone, as I had never met any of my relatives. Why should they suddenly appear now? I felt like I had nothing left in this world but the memories of my mother. Then, one morning, my compassionate neighbor informed me that the police were taking me to a local orphanage, as they had searched extensively but found no trace of any relatives. I had to pack my belongings and prepare to leave. As I packed and bid farewell to our home, I could see my mother's presence in every room. Finally, I entered her room and opened her closet, where I discovered the box. It was the same box she had given me without disclosing its contents. Amidst all the turmoil, I had completely forgotten about it. I concealed the box amidst my belongings and departed, bidding farewell to the home I had known throughout my life, a heart-wrenching parting indeed. However, I made a solemn vow to myself that when I reached the age of 18, I would return to resume my life there. It was merely a matter of time. Upon moving into the orphanage, I won't deny that the faces that greeted me were kind and welcoming. Yet, none of those faces could replace the one I longed to see, the face of my mother. Consequently, that place could never truly become a home for me. My world had crumbled, and I anxiously awaited the cover of night to unveil the secret held within the box. I patiently bided my time until everyone was asleep and then retrieved the box. Beneath my blanket, I used my cell phone to cast some light, and with bated breath, I cautiously opened the box. What lay before me was a profound shock, a revelation that shook the very foundation of my existence. How had I lived all these years without knowing the truth? My guardian angel, as I had believed my mother to be, was nothing more than a deceptive figure, a lying demon. My mother had concealed a colossal secret from me throughout my life, and I grappled with the overwhelming question of why. Why would she inflict such a deception upon me? The money she had tirelessly earned through double shifts at work, which I had assumed was for our future travels, was, in fact, stashed away in a small yellow envelope. In her own handwriting, she had labeled it, "This money belongs to Mr. Gavin Grayson. Please find him after my death and return it to him." Adjacent to it was a brief will, composed for my benefit. It read, "Dear Skylar, my little angel, as you read these words, I'll be in heaven watching over you from above. Just because I'm no longer with you in the physical sense and you can't see me, doesn't mean I'm not still your guardian. I ask for your forgiveness for harboring such a significant secret from you, knowledge that will undoubtedly turn your life upside down. I also apologize for not disclosing this in person. You will find Mr. Grayson's address at the end of this letter. He is a relative of ours. Please go to him, and he will reveal everything. Once again, please find it in your heart to forgive me. Love, Mom." Those were the last words from my mother, etched onto the note she left behind. A message that raised countless questions in my mind. Who on earth was this Gavin Grayson, and why was I instructed to return the money to him? My mother had never once mentioned his name, and I couldn't fathom the secret she had been guarding so fiercely. What had she been so afraid of? Throughout that sleepless night, a whirlwind of queries swirled within my mind, each one demanding answers. Exhausted as I was, these unrelenting thoughts only heightened my weariness. My perception of my mother had been irreversibly altered. How could she have been so selfish, withholding such crucial information from me? I found myself consumed by an insatiable desire to uncover the truth behind her secrets, yet there was no one to provide those answers. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of my troubles. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of some girls in the orphanage reading the letter my mother had left me. To my dismay, Ruby was among them. She must have overheard my tearful cries during the night, or perhaps spotted the faint glow of light from beneath my blanket, prompting her curiosity to investigate. What a cruel invasion of my privacy! I had barely spent a full day in this new place, and already Ruby had taken it upon herself to bully me. I shouted at them, demanding that they keep their hands off my box, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Desperate to retrieve it, I made an attempt to seize it from Ruby's grasp, but she ruthlessly pushed me to the ground. My heart ached, but I cared little for the physical pain. My sole focus was on reclaiming my box. Amidst my cries and the chaotic scene, the supervisor entered the room, prompting the girls to scatter and toss my box onto the floor. As for me, The supervisor escorted me to the principal's office to address the situation involving the troublesome new girl. I clutched my box tightly as I made my way to the principal's office, fully aware that I had been at the orphanage for less than a day and had already become a source of trouble. The weight of my secret weighed heavily on my conscience, unsure whether I should divulge the existence of Mr. Grayson, as my mother had entrusted me to keep it between the two of us before her passing. Seated before the headmistress, I endured what felt like an hour-long lecture on proper manners and how to conduct myself as a well-behaved young lady. In truth, I paid little attention to her words, my mind preoccupied with thoughts of escaping from this place. My first order of business was to exact revenge on Ruby, and I was determined not to let anything or anyone hinder me. My plan took shape, and I resolved to reveal my assertive side to Ruby in the hope that she would abandon her tormenting ways and cease to be a nuisance. Perhaps by making her the subject of ridicule, she would think twice before bothering me again. The following day, I patiently bided my time until noon when we would all be gathered in the same room. Carefully, I applied melted dark chocolate to the seat that Ruby typically occupied. As anticipated, she unknowingly took her place on the sabotage seat. The moment she stood up, revealing the embarrassing stain on her pants, I couldn't resist the urge to deliver a well-timed quip. "Hey Ruby, still struggling with potty training, I see?" The room erupted in laughter at her expense, and I reveled in the satisfaction of turning Ruby from a tormentor into the subject of amusement before the entire group. While I knew she would likely seek revenge, I was already planning my exit strategy, for I had come to realize that in this new life without my mother, I would need to learn how to stand up for myself. I understood that I had to rely on myself. No one else would stand up for me in this place. Despite my recent act of revenge, I generally kept to myself and didn't bother anyone unless they bothered me first. In truth, I was a kind-hearted girl. Following my small victory, my focus shifted to finding a way out of the orphanage. An entire week passed by as I attempted to disregard the irritating girls, particularly Ruby, and contemplated my escape plan. Armed with the money and Mr. Grayson's address, I was almost ready to make my move. One night, I seized the opportunity when everyone was asleep. With only a small backpack in hand, I made sure to take the box with me. My plan was to slip out through the back door unnoticed. However, my hopes were dashed when Ruby suddenly screamed, "Skylar is trying to run away." I had anticipated Ruby seeking revenge, but her actions this time could not only inconvenience me but also jeopardize my escape. Ruby had gained the upper hand. Once more, I found myself in the principal's office, but this time the lecture extended beyond matters of manners. The headmistress seized my bag and began rummaging through it, ignoring my pleas to return my personal belongings. Overwhelmed by frustration and despair, I covered my face with my hands, tears streaming down my cheeks, muttering, "There are personal things in there." However, my pleas fell on deaf ears, leaving me feeling as though the only link to uncover the truth behind the secret that haunted my nights had been cruelly snatched away.